Welcome to the 2021 Macroeconomic Policy Conference. Today, Team USA and Team Uganda will share about their respective policies adopted to mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19, namely quantitative easing and import substitution. We will then discuss the applicability of these policies to Singapore. The US economy is the largest economy in the world and is fueled by abundant natural resources, well-developed infrastructure, and advanced technology. The Federal Reserve System implements monetary policies mainly through manipulating interest rates.
In March 2020, the Fed slashed interest rates to zero, marking the onset of a liquidity trap. As seen, at an interest rate near zero, changes in money supply along the flat LM curve have no effect on interest rates or output. Thus, the Fed employed the use of QE, an unconventional monetary policy, through the purchase of long-term securities. Adopting QE sends a strong signal that the Fed wants to stimulate growth, and this exerts an influential force on capital markets and asset prices. The purchase of assets increases asset prices and reduces asset yields. Banks are better able to finance loans to households and firms, and to purchase other assets, further suppressing asset yield. A lower yield implies a lower cost of borrowing, incentivizing households and firms to increase expenditure. Investors are discouraged from holding zero-interest-based money and become willing to purchase assets that yield better returns. Given that economic agents are convinced that cheap funding will be made available until economic growth is restored, they no longer expect prices to fall and become more willing to spend. Indeed, the US economy saw the stock market take off as a result of QE. A high-performing stock market signifies that businesses are more financially equipped to invest. When households see a rise in portfolio value, they feel wealthier, and this spurs consumption and AD. This allows the economy to break out of a dangerous deflationary spiral. By the Keynesian multiplier process, there is a more than proportionate increase in RNY and a fall in cyclical unemployment. In Singapore, business confidence remains low compared to pre-pandemic times. Economic agents are likely to hold back expenditure, making it difficult for economic activity to be restored. QE targets this issue by stimulating confidence and encouraging spending. Hence, QE is potentially an effective policy for Singapore.
We disagree. In the long run, QE may create rampant inflation without generating economic growth. Liquidity injection drives up prices, and this runs the risk of a decline in international competitiveness. For a country highly dependent on trade and FDI, this could adversely impact Singapore's trade flows and economic growth. Most importantly, the use of QE as an interest rate policy in Singapore is not feasible, as Singapore is an interest rate taker. As an open and trade-reliant economy, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has chosen to allow free capital flows and to control exchange rate. By the Mundell-Fleming trilemma, MAS has to forego control over domestic interest rates, and QE cannot be used. Hence, Singapore cannot implement QE.
Uganda, a developing economy in East Africa specializing in agricultural products, has experienced declining economic growth and a worsening current account balance due to COVID-19.
That's right. The Ugandan government has reintroduced IS, which reduces imports of typically manufactured goods through protectionist measures like tariffs, while promoting domestic production of these goods, such as through the Uganda Development Fund. So, how does IS benefit Uganda? Generally, decreasing imports through IS increases both Uganda's net exports and domestic consumption. Aggregate demand rises, initiating the multiplier effect, ultimately achieving economic growth and falling unemployment rates as explained by Team USA. This might also improve Uganda's balance of trade, helping to offset her current account deficit. Furthermore, Uganda undergoes industrialization with IS. By promoting domestic production of previously imported manufactured goods, IS diverts resources to more capital-intensive manufacturing sectors. For example, A $5 million factory was built to produce face masks. By the solo swan growth model, this accumulation and development of capital increases total factor productivity, which shifts the productivity function upwards over time, causing a sustained increase in capital per worker, which may aid Uganda's post-COVID-19 recovery. Now, why can IS be applied to Singapore? Given Singapore's reliance on international trade, an increase in net exports due to IS may thus boost economic growth even more in Singapore. To reduce Singapore's vulnerability to economic upheaval during global recessions like COVID-19, IS can help with diversification by encouraging production of previously imported consumer goods like masks and medical equipment during COVID-19. Furthermore, Singapore's more inclusive institutions can reallocate resources even more efficiently during IS to foster greater economic progress, as supported by Acemoglu and Robinson.
Well, we think IS is clearly inappropriate for Singapore. For one, Singapore's small numerical multiplier value due to a strong necessity to import and presence of compulsory savings means that the increase in RNY would be limited. Thus, IS may not significantly revive Singapore's economy. In fact, IS may instead reduce economic growth in Singapore. Unlike Uganda, Singapore simply does not possess the natural resources required to produce its imported consumer goods. Thus, it must import both factors and final goods to fuel economic growth and sustain its citizens' standard of living. IS policy may thus leave Singapore worse off, without the necessary resources for post-COVID-19 economic recovery.
Evidently, the USA and Uganda's COVID-19 policies have limitations in Singapore's unique context.